Hey guys, Strafe here. This is a very special video that I wanted to make. I wanted to do this video for a couple of reasons. Number one is we never really had a video like this before. And number two, I'm testing out a new program, which is Samsung Dex for recording. So no more BlueStacks, and hopefully all the audio distortion crackling has stopped. It's actually a great program because you can actually play games full screen on your computer desktop. There are actually other phone programs that do this from like Microsoft and stuff. I was not aware of those things. And not having to use an emulator too, because those slow down your computer by a large amount. Okay, the first one at the top we have Rem. She came out month 2 and was definitely one of the top supports because month 1 was mostly damage dealers. We had units like Garland and Cloud. So she had the strongest attack aura. She's a 70% attack aura. She's doing AoE damage with her EX plus weapon and just swap turns to your allies, which you can actually manipulate quite a bit if you have partners like Noctis, or we have units like Vayne now, so you can just easily outrun the enemy and just never let them have a turn. So Rem was very key for me. I actually used her in Dimensions End tier 5 when it came out without any kind of dispeller for the combo I just mentioned, using her with Noctis and Agrias to paralyze the enemy. So she was actually a very key player, and she's fallen off quite a bit. There's a couple things with her kit that she's kind of lacking. Number one is the Brave Plus. She has no Brave Plus actually. It doesn't battery the party, it doesn't battery herself. It's just a one hit Brave attack, and it's very lackluster because she has no filler turn really. And then when you do HP plus, you don't gain any bravery. Unlike units like Penelo or Y'shtola, they have a self bravery gain, but Rem doesn't have any of that stuff, so she lacks quite a bit. But in terms of longevity, she can go quite a long way because she has the free ability after using EX, and it's pretty fast, so it should come up around 2 ability uses. So she actually has great longevity, but again, not the best in terms of filler moves, and she has no brave regen for herself or the party, so it gets kind of difficult in longer fights with Rem. Nevertheless, she's one of the best support units that I've had for sure after going purple. Alright, next up we have Zack. Zack came out pretty late, came out like 3 months after the start of Chaos, but he's been one of the best tanks for sure. He's not totally stomping the bosses now because they have guaranteed breaks, and that kind of messes up his shield. Once you get broken, he loses the shield, so we're going to start seeing more of that. One of the hardest difficulty fights ever is the Trey Chaos, and that's going to have guaranteed breaks, just like the Fran Chaos did as well. Other than that, Zack is still the best at tanking just single target. Doesn't protect your teammates from any kind of AoE, unlike Bosch or Warrior of Light. Even Snow does that really well now, but Zack still does a lot of damage, and he mitigates a lot of single target damage for your team. But still, he's not going to be like the best universal tank. For me, he was very key for a couple months after his release. I still haven't used him in Dimensions End actually. I've been saving him for I don't know what tier in case I actually need a tank. The last time I used one was tier 8 with Warrior of Light. Most people use them in tier 7 with those dual beetles. I used 8 instead of a tank, and then I paired them with Edge. So that bypassed the need of any kind of tank. And to me, he's been one of the best choices as well in terms of a tank. My favorite would probably be Celes, but she has very low potencies and she has no attack aura, so she doesn't really keep up. Zack for sure is a very well-rounded tank that you can just slot in your team and do perfectly fine in most content. Next up, we have Y'shtola. Oof, this one is actually, she's super powerful for sure, especially when she came out. I think she came out month 2 as well, and she's been reigning supreme for a long time. She's even usable right now. I'd barely use Y'shtola actually, personally, because I like more offensive supports. So like I said, I've been using Rem a lot when she came out, same month. And then ever since that, the next one was Rosa, which came out, I think it was a month later after Y'shtola. So I've been using those more offensive based supports. Y'shtola is good, she does a lot of batteries, but what I found was your team actually leaks bravery quite a bit when you use Y'shtola. Like when you use the EX or you use Medica, you can actually leak quite a bit. And the other thing is she eats up a lot of turns because she has really high turn rate on her skills and she's really fast. So you can be doing a lot of turns with minimal damage a lot of times because her attack's not that too high. So especially if the enemy resists magic her stone is very gimped and she eats up a lot of turns. That's what I found when I used Y'shtola. But again, I hardly used her myself for a lot of chaoses. I plugged her in entropy tier 4 because she pretty much carries that stage, and you can just pair her with any kind of base EX weapon users and just dump bravery every turn, and she herself will just carry you to victory because your team won't die. You can just summon on the Chimera, dump your bravery, and then you're good to go. So that's my experience with Y'shtola. For sure she's very strong, but I just don't like her playstyle, and you know, I find her to be leaking a lot of bravery. I haven't been using her much personally. Alright, next up we have Krile. Krile is actually one of the weirdest choices that I've made in terms of EX Plus. So primarily I went for Krile because I thought she'd be pretty fun to play. I knew she wasn't the strongest EX Plus user for sure. She came out month 1, but she's one of the few like hybrid supports that we've ever had in month 1. Everyone else was pretty much a damage dealer like I mentioned earlier. So Krile was super fun for me to max out because you get a lot of battery. You can bypass resistances that way. But the big thing is that her battery is very, very small if you don't boost her attack power enough, because bosses get really tanky. And if you don't have another support along with Krile, her 40% attack aura is not going to do anything for her own damage, which means you can be battering negligible amounts of bravery. My experience with Krile has been pretty poor after a month or two. You know, she's very hard to slot into teams. Now it's easier to use her because we have very strong support units like Rosa or something with strong attack auras that just boost her levels to insane amounts, and especially Aranea with her critical damage. But yeah, Aranea makes everybody viable, and you can just take advantage of the critical damage, and then her battery in turn increases with that as well. But Krile is definitely one of my favorites to use in co-ops because her C65 is one of the few abilities that grant overflow to the party. I think it's 20%, which is like, you know, it's on par with Rosa having 20% aura with her overflow. So she's very good in co-op. Her EX is fast recharge after 2 EX, and she's fast turn rate with her skill 1 as well. Krile's super fun to use still, even though she's not the best unit for chaos. Alright, next up we have Ultimecia. This one is a powerhouse for sure, one of the meta units. Still viable in current chaos. People are trying to free her up for like tier 12 or tier 13 or something, because that one needs magic units. So she's still gonna be super powerful, and she does get an LD later on. Doesn't have to worry about stacks as much, and I've been having great experience with Ultimecia. I've been using her pretty much every month as well, because you can always find a spot for Ultimecia if you just want to kill enemies before they get a chance to kill your team. Just put her in there. You can pair up with any kind of battery or overflow aura support. She loves pairing up with Rosa because she gets brave regen every turn. She gets 20% overflow and all of that attack and max brave aura. She's the perfect partner. You can just dish out a lot of AoE and just kill bosses. And she has that unique frame debuff which lowers their defense as well. It saps them, so it's super powerful. I have no regrets with Ultimecia. She's probably one of my best purple damage dealers ever. She has never fallen off, and you can always get around her weakness by doing party compositions with Eye Brave and Brave Regen. So if you pair her with Rosa like I mentioned, or Penelo, or even like Y'shtola, just a lot of Brave Regen and battery, you can bypass her weakness of having a low potency HP+. Okay, next up we have Serah. Serah is super strong debuffer unit. She also has some really high auras. For me, I haven't used Serah too much because of her timing. I think she came out the same month as Rosa, like right before she came out a couple weeks earlier. And the problem with Serah mostly is just because she doesn't do any healing for your party. So what ends up happening is if you bring Serah for debuffing and attack aura, she will cover those auras nicely, but then you have to slot in another support unit that can heal. So effectively you bring 2 support units to a fight. And her damage per turn is very low if she doesn't have any kind of external battery. So that support now has to do battery as well, because Serah HP plus does 50% battery. But then if she's from 0 battery, then you're not going to have enough bravery to give your team. And she eats up a lot of turns. She's super fast. Her skills have high turn rate. So that's the issue with Serah. But for sure she can bypass enemy resistances because her Moonlight is so powerful based on battery alone. And then her EX ability has a self battery gain as well. So She can bypass resistances and also help your team dish out more damage with the attack aura and the defense down from her unique frame debuff. But again, I haven't used Serah too much. It was hard for me to slot her in Dimensions End as well because I was saving her for some later tiers. I did end up using her in tier 10 because the bosses gain so many buffs and she can get rid of 4 of them by herself. So she's one of the best debuffers for me in terms of just making your party survivable, boosting their attack damage, lowering the enemy's attack damage, and lowering their defense. Next up is Penelo. Penelo is one of the more recent support units and definitely still a powerhouse. She doesn't care about enemy stats. She's kind of like Charlotta. When I ended up getting her and using her, I had a very similar experience where she just does her skills and doesn't really care what the enemy does because she has just battery for your team over and over again. And she has true damage with the EX Plus, which shaves so much bravery. It goes up to 84k now. When she came out, it was up to 81k. But with more boards and more stats, she'll probably hit 100k someday. So super excited for that. She did get level 80 in JP recently, and still was a powerhouse at that time from what I've heard. So yeah, Penelo is definitely one of the best support units ever so far. And she can't really fall off because she has free turns, she has super high batteries, and true damage. So one of the best investments of supports that I've ever made in the game so far. Okay, next up we have King. King, I had at the same time as 8, purple those 2 instantly. And what I found was I actually use 8 a lot more than King. Because King is just a straightforward damage dealer. That is all he does for your team is just damage. Which is nothing wrong with that, but the problem is you need more utility or more time to do the damage. Like damage dealers like Shadow, they have their own evade. So they can help your team take less damage, for instance. And he's really fast. He's even faster than King, so he can dish out more damage overall. But the problem with King is you don't have any kind of guaranteed break. At least Lightning has guaranteed rebreaks with her C65 or her EX Plus ability. But with King, you don't have anything like that. He just stalls a turn with his A8 ability. So it's really tough to use him in environments, especially with one boss. You would think he actually excels against one boss, but he actually does better against multiple targets, but not too many targets, because if there's 3 targets, you could just bring an AoE damage dealer, right? Someone like Ultimecia or Papalymo or Emperor. If it's only 2 enemies, that's where he shines, so it's kind of like counterintuitive as to how his kit plays. So I haven't used King too much since he came out. Again, very hard to use, and he doesn't have any kind of brave refund, so it's tough to save him from breaks because he always wants to use the skill every turn. But he's so fast that he'll probably act right before the boss, and then if you get broken, he can't save himself because he has no brave refund or anything like that. I haven't even slotted him in Dimensions End because it's tough to make use of him. Like I said, I have used him before, but then I ended up freeing him up to use up less ingots, so for me that's a fun thing I like to do. But he's definitely usable in many tiers, like tier 6. He doesn't need to worry about the physical resistance. You can put him in tier 6. He's a great choice there, and that's probably the tier that I would personally recommend if you're going to use King in Dimensions End. Okay, next up we have Agrias. Agrias is one of the weaker EX Plus units actually. She has amazing utility, especially when she came out. She still does, she can shut down bosses, but a lot of bosses now resist Paralyze or they move too fast where she can't keep up with her EX Plus recharge. It didn't improve at all from her base kit, and that's the big problem with her Agrias because she has no free skills and you can't really spam her abilities. I did some experimentation. Actually, you can recharge her EX Plus after 2 ability uses if you pair her with Selfie, so it's actually viable if you bring a strong damage dealer for your 3rd slot. You know, someone like Vayne or something like that. So depending on the Chaos map, it is possible to still use Agrias in certain matchups. Her HP Plus is not too strong as well. Hasn't aged very well, and you can't spam abilities because she doesn't have any, and she has no free abilities like I said. But many people use her in tier 1 of Entropy. Myself, I used her in tier 5 and she was a very key player because you need that stun in wave 1 to shut down Kate Sith, unless you're running a Dispeller. But for me, like I said, I didn't have any kind of Dispeller that I wanted to use. Very cool strategy that I didn't think would work. but she was a very key player. So if you guys do want to try out some kind of weird build for tier 5 with no Dispeller, Agrias is definitely a unit that I would recommend. But she hasn't aged that well, and I haven't used her very much since she came out. So I would say after a month she came out, she kind of fell off, but during that time she's super powerful. Alright, next up we have Celes. So Celes is one of the earlier EX Plus tanks that we've had, and she's actually still holding up because her role at tanking magic is still one of the best in the game. Also, can't damage her with any kind of magic attack, and the more important thing is actually she reduces your party's brave damage taken from magic attacks with her runic blade aura buff. So this makes her very powerful in party utility. She has no party regen, but that's not really a big deal if there's a magic heavy fight or the enemy has a strong AoE magic attack like Mega Flare or something in tier 10. She's going to reduce the brave damage for your team by a large amount, and she can work in many tiers because of this. Even the boss does physical attacks, you can still tank it because she has huge brave refunds on her skills. I did a whole separate review on Celes when she came out as well, so you guys can check that out if you haven't already. Her kit is very unique because none of the other tanks have big brave refunds like she does. The only thing she's missing is attack aura on your team, so you do have to make that up. Other than that, she is very strong and very well-rounded tank unit. Okay, moving on, we have Rosa. Rosa came out and she pretty much dominated the support tier for months until I would say Penelo came out, and that was like 2 or 3 months later, which is a long time. And again, she's still usable because she does everything super well. The only thing that she's kind of lacking is healing for your team is very low, it's 5% per turn. And then her EX heals 20%, which is pretty good, but it's not up often enough to take care of the healing role. The other thing is she has no mitigation for your team either, but a lot of supports don't have mitigation. Like Yushola doesn't have anything, and Penelo doesn't have mitigation either. So with those supports, you still take full damage against the enemy attacks. But Rosa is more offensive for your team, boosting their attack power, their brave regen per turn, boosting their overflow as well. And you can use her in any kind of tier and entropy. For me, I saved her because I'm waiting for like a better opportunity. I'm waiting for like stronger damage dealers to use her. But her damage per turn is not super high and definitely has been power crept by now. Penelo and Hope, they all do more damage than her per turn. They also have free turns. Rosa doesn't have any free turns. So that's the thing that works against her, but she's still super strong when she came out, but definitely power crept now. Oh yeah, even Selfie does more damage per turn, I would say, because she has a lot of battery on her skills in comparison to Rosa. Her HP plus does a lot of battery. When you use Aura, does good battery, and then Wall does good battery too. But yeah, Rosa is definitely still usable, but definitely not one of the best supports at the moment. She kind of fell off, but for her time, she was one of the best for sure. Okay, next up we have Golbez. The Golbez is just a damage dealer. He's a dark type damage dealer when he came out. And for me, when I purpled him, I kind of regretted it right away because I tried using him in a bunch of past chaoses, and you know what? I found out that most of them resist either dark or they cleanse their own debuffs, like the Agrias chaos or Fang that gains their own buffs, that overrides his debuff, or Barret, Lost Chapter, they cleanse. So a lot of these old chaos fights, they just cleanse or just gain buffs. And Golbez is too slow to keep up his EX recharge. So it imperils the dark element, but because he's a slow character himself, you can't keep up with the boss because the debuff only lasts 4 turns. Really hard to use him even in current content. He's just a straightforward damage dealer like King, offers no other utility to your party. So for them, it's really tough to slot them in on team if all they do is damage, but they can't manipulate their turns super well, unlike other damage dealers. So that's the weakness, I would say, for those two units. A lot of people have similar experience with Sephiroth, because again, he's just a pure damage dealer. He has small speed down, but it's only like 10%. It's pretty much negligible. And then Sephiroth, again, he also can't manipulate his turns. He also has lower potencies on his skills like Fervent Blow. For me, I didn't even slot him into Entropy yet. Haven't found a tier that I wanted to use him in. But tier 6, he could definitely do a lot of work. And then tier 7 is not recommended because they cleanse debuffs. Again, he can't really keep up. But he's a key player actually for tier 8 because the behemoths do elemental changes and you can just bypass that with his imperil. So if I were to use Golbez, he would definitely be slotted in tier 8. For me, I used Lulu, Warrior of Light, and Ultimecia there, so I didn't have a need for his own imperil. If I were to swap out Lulu, then Ultimecia wouldn't be able to do anything, and then if you swap out Ultimecia, then Lulu, it's no point of her being there, so that's why I couldn't slot him in yet. But he's super strong for his time, definitely one of the reigning co-op champions with his start of match EX ability. He can still do a lot of damage in co-op quests, but definitely during the longer ones like Cosmic co-op, he kind of falls out because he's super slow, and yeah, his time was a few months ago, so it's not quite a big deal for damage dealer. Alright, moving on, we have 8. 8 is one of my favorite EX Plus units ever. So he's kind of like this hybrid unit between damage dealer and evasion. So because he does evasion, that can help support your team because you minimize AoE damage. And if the boss targets a certain unit the entire time, like if they target highest HP, you can manipulate that and just put in 8 as your unit. So this is very noticeable in tier 7, where the last boss always targets the highest HP. After like the first round, he pretty much always does that. So if you put in 8, you never have to worry about dying. The only thing you have to worry about is the AoE attack for sure. But like I said, you reduce the damage because he evades the thing himself. And he doesn't really have a problem with upkeeping the buff by himself without any kind of buff extender. It's only at 2 turns, but what you can do is actually minimize the risk by saving that right before the boss goes and targets him. So even if the EX Plus is ready, what you can do is Brave Plus and Jab Plus, or you can just do regular Jab. And that's how you really maximize the use out of 8, in my experience. I've used him for many Chaos fights. He's very effective even in the recent Chaos fights. XF Chaos was a very great showcase for him. You can just get a free counter on the player phase turn, which is unheard of, and you protect your party that way. So he's one of the best units for XF Chaos. For the highest Chaos, he's okay as well, but he doesn't damage the shields, so he's not so good there. But he's definitely a really good player for Sync Chaos with the crazy AoEs and the crazy single target attacks from the boss. But again, because he doesn't have taunt, it's tough to actually make use of that on the last wave. But you can take advantage of that by pairing him with other last stand users or more brave mitigation, and then 8 would do a lot of work for you. Alright, Papalymo is the next unit. Papalymo is an interesting case because he's just a pure magic damage dealer, but he does have crazy burst windows. And then the thing is with Papalymo that I found that I didn't like very much was the HP plus rotation in his kit. The EX Plus is on a weird recast speed where it's not guaranteed to come up after 2 skills and 1 HP plus. Sometimes it takes you 2 skills and 2 HP pluses, which really slows them down. So the way to bypass this is to pair him with Selfie. If you do that, then it only takes 2 abilities, and then his EX is already back up. So it eliminates the need for him to do HP plus at all and makes him much stronger. And they have a really great interaction because Papalymo, when you use the EX plus ability, it extends his buffs by 3 turns. You're gonna get Aura extended by 3 turns, which means it pretty much never falls off because you can have a 100% rotation with Selfie. And this makes him one of the best pairings in the game. Probably higher damage than even Ultimecia at this point, with better longevity, more burst damage. But it's tough to use him because he's just relying on 2 elements, and one of them is a single target attack, the other one is AoE. So he's kind of in this in-between stage of a kit where he's good against multiple enemies and that's where he wants to be, but his second skill is only good against 1 enemy. But he's super fun to play, a lot of manipulations, good brave regen. So like I said, if you pair him with Selfie, she gives him more eye brave. You can just boost up his brave regen. For me, I would use Papalymo at tier 8 or tier 9 would be my recommendations. Alright, next up we have Vayne. Vayne is a powerhouse of a unit, so he does a lot of things for your team. Delay, he gives auras, rebreaks for your team as well, knocking back the enemies and taking turns. And the more turns you take, the more breaks you get too, because remember, after 5 turns the enemy brave comes back. So if you manipulate well enough, you get even more breaks with his kit. So this guy's just a break monster over and over again. And he's not limited to single target battles, because with 2 enemies you can just manipulate their turns. So I showed him off in the Sync Chaos doing the Extreme Challenge, and this guy just doesn't care. The Mare Lifts never got the AoE attack off because you're just knocking them back over and over again. The more hits you're doing, the easier it is to launch the enemies because you're doing more chase damage every time you hit them. So this guy not only does delays and breaks, but he also makes it easier to launch enemies, which is the big deal in chaos fights. Especially when you need launch, like when you killing the mare lifts. If you kill them with launch, then they won't do the counter attack. So it's another way besides summon to take him out. So Vayne's definitely a monster. Some people may be disappointed in Vayne because his damage per turn seems pretty low on average. And he definitely needs a support unit to boost up his attack, because his attack aura alone is not enough to bypass chaos defenses, especially if they have their own generic buffs. If you put him in tier 10 without any kind of debuffer or attack aura, you will see him hit for peanuts pretty much. A great support units for him would be long duration buffs. Penelo has them. My favorite is actually Rosa because she has auras and she has good brave regen per turn. So Vayne loves those things, and if you pair him with the right supports, he's going to be a strong unit for a long time. Okay, we're getting towards the end here, the last row. And what we have coming up is Pattern Settle EX Plus. So this guy has a very strong, I would say, third slot kit, where he's not like the carry for your team, but he's not, you know, the strongest support for your team either. Very strong, well-rounded kit for your third slot party member. Very similar to Agrias, where you would slot them in last pretty much. They can help you out with some mechanics, but they're not going to be the key player in your chaos match. After using him and after trying to use him so much, yeah, I did rank him very high when he came out, but he's kind of lower tier, I would say. He's kind of like more middle tier. Like I said, I never found him to be like a key player or a carry unit for your team, but he's very strong because he does a lot for your team in terms of he brings attack auras, he brings max brave aura. Most importantly, he brings the Imperil aura, which is very useful for the end of turn fights. After the boss gets their 50%, you know, defense increase, then you can just pop the Imperil and just go to town. But he's super versatile, and he's one of the best healers in the game because skill 2 heals by, I believe, is 30%, which is a large amount. You know, that's equivalent to Yuri's HP regen per turn, and he gets a 10% regen per turn on top of that. So when you pop skill 2, pretty much heals 40% of the unit's HP. So he's one of the best healers in the game, and he has high damage per turn, very high longevity, very high consistency with one of the best HP plus attacks in the game with Luminous Blast. The only weakness I found with him is that the potencies on the HP plus isn't super strong, so you don't really hit the cap as much, and his max brave is kind of on the low side. So those are the things that hold him back in my opinion. Moving on with Lightning. Lightning is one of the recent EX Plus units that just came out, but she is still a monster. All the hype from JP has been, you know, lived up to, and she gets even better when she gets her burst weapon and LD weapon. She's one of my favorite damage dealers to play currently, and you can just manipulate turns so well with Lightning, even better than Vayne, and her potencies are much stronger than Vayne in my opinion. She is, you know, dealing more damage than him per turn. She's doing more breaks with the guaranteed breaks per turn, and the delays are more powerful. They're like 3-turn delay, which is huge, and great longevity with the free skills as well. Lightning has been personally one of my favorites to play for a long time. She wasn't that great in Cosmos actually when she came back with the rework. Even though she came like 2 months earlier, I still didn't find a good use for Lightning at the time because I had the top tier units. I had Noctis, I had Vayne. I didn't really find much use to using Lightning. But her EX Plus has definitely made her a monster, and you can do so much with her kit. It's insane. Like, you don't even have to maximize the buffs on her. Even if you pair it with Penelo, they have interlapping buffs. You know, it doesn't really care because her kit's just so powerful. And she can solo a lot of chaos content. She can even solo the Alexander chaos that's coming up in like 2 months, and that's supposed to be one of the hardest fights, you know, in that time. So Lightning, I'm definitely excited for to keep using, and pretty much no drawback I would say to her kit. She impairs her own element too, and she gets Imperil weakness. Okay, next up we have Porom. Porom is an interesting character kit. So I chose to use her to max her out because she has great utility for your party. She prevents your units from dying. I don't think I have a good showcase for Porom at the moment, but behind the scenes she actually puts in a lot of work because pretty much can't die. So to give you an example, the Sync Chaos, the Lost Chapter, the last boss has like 37k max bravery, right? So if he does the 37k for your entire team, Porom reduces that for your damage taken by 70%, so you only take a third of that damage. You take 30%. And unit's base HP is pretty much over 12k at this point, so you pretty much cannot die if you have Porom on your team. And she also buffs your HP by, I think, 30% overflow, so you have a higher buffer to work with as well. So she's one of the best units in terms of survivability, definitely no regrets. People use her even in Ultimecia still, and she has her uses there. The only issue with her kit is she doesn't do too much healing. She has no passive HP healing or regen. She has no brave regen for your team either, so the only thing that would hold her back is kind of like a filler turn or a turn by turn basis. But if you pair her with other supports like Penelo even, she puts in a lot of work and covers your team for many areas where the boss are pretty much never going to be able to kill you. So I would definitely recommend Porom. She's very strong in many entry tiers. I'm excited to use her for the future. Alright, the last unit, EX Plus unit, is Aranea. She has been wrecking chaos ever since she came out, still wrecking chaos. And the damage boost from that frame debuff is super potent for many units. She's been banned in all the TCC challenges now, and I haven't been using her recently because of that reason. Just, you know, it's not fun to just stomp content, delay bosses forever so they never get a turn. Just not fun for me, so I stopped using her for a while after she came out. She does insane damage. She also gets free turns once you break enemies, and she has the EX buff up. But the interactions with Aranea is by far the best part of her kit. The Vital Crusher debuff boosting critical damage is just so much damage for your team. It's also guaranteed criticals, so units like Vayne appreciate the damage boost so much. But not much to say about Aranea other than she's just super broken for her time. Her HP plus still one of the best in the game and will be one of the best until even like current JP standards. It's just super insane how much damage it does, and you can just spam it over and over again. The only thing you need is overclock buff, which is not hard to get. But yeah, Aranea definitely a powerhouse of a unit and probably will be for a long time even after burst. I would say she starts to fall off after LD era because units start to get crazy, and the only thing Aranea brings mostly is damage. She's mostly just a damage dealer, and then she brings some delay, but you can't really spam that because you don't have free abilities and you have limited skills. So I can start to see her fall off after units get LDs and their kits start to get buffed up so much. And that's gonna be it for the overview. My voice is starting to die and fall off, and the other units I have at less ingots. These units right behind Aranea are at 1 ingot, and then after them is just 0 ingots. Alright, so that is it for the EX Plus overviews. Let me know which ones are the favorites that you guys have built, and we can talk about that in the comments down below. Let me know if you enjoyed the higher quality, if these are the types of videos that you guys like, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Take care.